Good morning, Dan and Amy. Forget trying to identify patient zero. We have identified something I didn't think existed.
And what is that?
A journalist who admits to having made mistakes. This is shocking. Stephen Ross Pomeroy is the editor of RealClear Science, realclearscience.com. And he penned a piece this week, Everything I Got Wrong About COVID-19. I mean, that's the kind of accountability that's going to give the profession a bad name. Stephen Ross Pomeroy, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, Dan. Hey, Amy. Pleasure to be on this morning.
Before we get there, since you're Real Clear Science guy, help us with this this alien debate, alien UFO debate we were having just a minute ago. And so,
my pleasure. I love that debate.
Oh, you do? Okay, good.
So are you a believer?
Oh, yeah.
So, well, first of all, let's assume they exist. Do you think it plays out? We were talking about it with our news guy, Mike Scott, during the break. Do you think it plays out like Alienation, that show from the 80s where they came here and they started dressing in suits and getting regular jobs and were integrated into the humankind, but then there were some problems because some people didn't like the aliens, and it just became this whole, morality tale of race relations and the other kind of discussion in America? Or, will they take us to their planet and probe us anally? How's it going to go?
Well, if that was the debate, that's quite a debate. I'm actually I'm a millennial, so I missed out on most of the 80s, unfortunately.
Oh.
So I missed that show. I was more of a Men in Black, alien kind of guy. I love that movie.
All right. Well, but I mean, what's your take on these UFOs and whether or not they're going to take us to their leaders?
Mm-hmm. So the UFO recent news that came out is very interesting. Actually, that was what originally got me into loving science when I was a kid. I just loved reading about Bigfoot, UFOs, Loch Ness Monster, all that stuff. But this recent one, one thing you notice, I would say, and unfortunate to pop the bubble of a lot of believers out there, at least with UFOs. I don't doubt there are aliens out there. It's a big universe. But in this instance, over the years, you'll see the videos that we get. They're always grainy. They're always just out of focus. And that's just what we're seeing here. We're not seeing any definitive proof.
I just want to see little aliens inside the UFOs.
You want to see them?
And little people,
Anyway,
I mean, are they green like we imagine them? Are they short, tall?
Do you think did you watch the series Firefly, since you're a sci-fi nerd like me?
I love Firefly.
So do you think we could do that with the aliens, like fly around the universe and have adventures and stuff?
We're going to have to work out faster than light travel first, which is another fun topic. Well, we could be all morning.
Yeah.
Let's talk about COVID. Let's talk about aliens. This is a great science show now.
You guys can go out to lunch together and discuss all you want.
Yeah, all right. Well, we'll get a game of D&D together.
Oh my!
And we'll talk about it. All right. Let's talk about COVID and your mea culpa. And we don't accept your apology, but we appreciate the effort. The things that you got wrong about COVID-19, we finally found the guy. You're the one journalist who got something wrong in covering the COVID-19 pandemic over the last year.
Well, so I think what helps with my background as a science journalist is that I have a degree in science, and what I learned when I got my degree is that it's okay to be wrong, especially in science, as long as you admit it and you seek out the truth, because that's the ultimate goal, is we want to find what's right. And especially in this unprecedented pandemic, we had lots of information coming out extremely fast. Actually, some interesting statistics to that end. Science usually goes through what process called peer review, in which other scientists will look at other scientists' work. And that process was 8 times faster during the pandemic. 8 times faster. So some of these studies were getting just pushed through the peer review process extremely quickly. And an analysis actually found that these articles were of significantly lower rigor. So we were getting faster science with poor quality.
Yeah. Well, right. Yeah, right. So getting crap fast as opposed to quality a little bit later. I mean, obviously, lives on the line and so on and so forth. But
absolutely.
But so that's sort of interesting too, because right there is one of the aspects of the discussion that was completely absent across all aspects, which is that there are trade-offs in this world.
Absolutely.
But what was the biggest mistake that you made? I mean, if because I like that there's some contrition, and the media is not immune to making mistakes. That's for
Is
sure.
that right?
I
Wow.
know.
Wow.
Well, but you only have certain journalists that are willing to admit it.
Yeah, there's one. There's the guy
Yeah,
we're
no,
talking to.
Right.
I totally agree with that one. One of the biggest mistakes I think I made early on is I wrote a piece back in February 2020 in which I was optimistic that the virus wouldn't spread as quickly outside of China, simply because China has extremely high population density. And here it seems I was wrong. If we can believe China's numbers, they're only at 91,000 cases of coronavirus since the pandemic began, but the U.S., or excuse me, the rest of the world is at 178 million. So pretty significant disparity.
If you can believe those numbers. But
Yeah.
I mean, look,
If we can.
that mistake has you probably at some point being leveled up to run the National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Disease. They're taking over for Fauci, right? Here's
Well, if they call, I'll take the interview, I guess.
There you go.
Not looking to leave my job right now.
Here's one of the things you said you got wrong, but I don't think so. I think you're wrong about being wrong. You said, "Is New York really a coronavirus success story?" First, you said first I suggested that after a devastating initial pandemic wave, the state may be surprisingly close to herd immunity. A second wave demonstrated that to be incorrect. And second, you shared the rosy opinion that herd immunity of the coronavirus could be reached when 20 to 50% of the population is infected or vaccinated, and the latest data suggests it's a bit higher than that. But before you beat yourself up too much, Andrew Cuomo this week at a press event, if you said to us on day one in the beginning of COVID that we were going to be capable of the accomplishment that we reached, nobody would believe you. So you were right to take a victory lap. You were even a little earlier than even Andrew Cuomo. That's all.
I appreciate that. I wanted to be pretty nitpicky on my own stuff, but I do personally agree with you. I mean, if you look at the numbers, New York's first wave was absolutely devastating. They were unprepared, and maybe their response to it after the catastrophe happened was decent. But I mean, if you look at that second wave in New York, I mean, yes, they had theoretically as many documented cases, but there must have been millions of cases they missed in that first wave just because they weren't prepared. The death count with any death, and obviously coronavirus pandemic has been tragic and terrible, but the death count the second wave around for New York was 1/5 of their first one. So clearly there was significant immunity in the state because Cuomo and other officials just simply weren't prepared.
Yeah, that's right. And by the way, this is another story of the aspect of the story of the press coverage, the lionization of Andrew Cuomo there, such that he was busy working on a book to celebrate himself, even as there was a scandal that should have been unearthed earlier that was ongoing.
I mean, personally, my personal opinion, not as a journalist, is that Cuomo's leadership was less than effective during the pandemic. But I don't want to go outside of my science journalist credibility and jump into politics too much there.
But he's America's mayor. He had these America's governor, excuse me, and he did such a good job with these daily briefings that he got an international Emmy Award for them. So for some reason, people fell in love with him and trusted him more than they did President Trump.
Did he get an Emmy Award?
He did, an international daytime Emmy Award.
Yeah.
Goodness, yeah. I suppose that doesn't do much for actually saving lives in a pandemic, sadly.
No.
You also say the thing that you appears you got wrong, although we don't know yet, is your piece in April of last year that the likely source of the coronavirus was the wet market in Wuhan.
Yes, no, it appears now that was probably not where the actual jump from whatever animal it was occurred, but that could have been the super spreader event. And also, as we're learning more recently, although not necessarily learning because this has always been out there and RealClear Science has been covering it, that, there's the Wuhan Institute of Virology right over there. They study coronaviruses. This could have easily been a lab leak. There's no hard evidence yet of that, but the circumstantial evidence and the fact that China is not allowing any real investigation of that institute is pretty suspect.
Yeah, they even said the investigation's over and they're not letting any Americans or the WHO back into that Wuhan virology lab.
And that would be regrettable because we should be able to find the origins, or at least have a good search into the origins of this virus, so that way we can prepare for the next one.
As a science journalist and somebody with an actual background in science, which is relatively unique in the profession, what was the thing that was most disappointing to you about the media's coverage of all aspects?
Well, from my perspective, I did see early on there was just a lot of the media was jumping on any sort of scary headline. I honestly, to be honest, I noticed RealClear Science's traffic go up significantly when this pandemic began, but I didn't want to get a lot more traffic just by posting, scary headlines. I wanted to make sure that once we had this new audience, that we were telling them exactly what was going on. So one of my personal pet peeve is, maybe you all remember this. Do you remember when early on there were reports that even mild cases of COVID could cause significant heart damage, because that was all over the media?
Well, that's why Big Ten football didn't play. They specifically cited that what
You're
you just
absolutely right.
mentioned.
There was an early study, very early study, which suggested that up to 60% of college football players who were infected with this mild COVID had heart inflammation, which is a very nebulous term. I saw that study. I said, this looks very preliminary. I have questions about the methodology. I'd like not to report on it. That story was jumped on across the media hemisphere. And now we have a lot of people thinking, oh, if I get mild COVID, my heart could be wrecked for life. But now get this. We now have good data out there. About a dozen studies have come out, have explored this. And they found that mild COVID doesn't cause inflammation of the heart. Less than 1% of cases may have some sort of heart inflammation after mild COVID. And even after severe COVID, 9 out of 10 people who recover from severe COVID don't have normal heart function. Their hearts are totally fine in 90% of cases. Yet, if you Google COVID, heart damage, something like that, you will find all of the original stories which suggest that it's still going to wreck your heart if you get it. That's why, personally, that is why I wrote my articles, because the record needs to be corrected on this and so many other issues for COVID-19. We need to get this right.
Yeah, I appreciate your conscientiousness. And here's the thing. My greatest frustration over the last year is and science is rooted in skepticism. Thus, as you were talking about peer review and the scientific method, the trial and error, it's rooted in skepticism. You got to prove up and take on all challengers. And skepticism ran in only one direction. It ran in the direction of anybody who was not enthusiastic about lockdowns, was not had questions about therapeutics, had questions about why we stopped talking about therapeutics once the vaccines were developed, have questions about adverse outcomes from the vaccines. Anybody that expressed skepticism about the party line from the TV doctors, the government TV doctors, and the politicians, particularly those that were lockdown oriented, was just ignored. And I'm not talking about, people like me. I'm talking about like Martin Kulldorff at Harvard and Jay Bhattacharya at Stanford and Sunetra Gupta at Oxford and so on and so forth. That to me, it was such a blow to science and to the credibility of pronouncements from people that hold themselves out as experts, and the confusion that creates. Which experts should I believe? One group of experts is amplified, and another group of experts is silenced.
Yeah, it was very tough. I mean, this pandemic was extremely tough for the media, for the people, for scientists. I mean, and you'd like to think that everybody did their best, but obviously some mistakes were made, and I think that, at least with my piece, that's where I was trying to be accountable to myself and to my readers. And I think that other journalists and other scientists, I think a lot of scientists have been pretty good about being accountable, but I think they owe that to the public as well.
He is Stephen Ross Pomeroy, editor of RealClear Science, realclearscience.com. Check out his column, Everything I Got Wrong About COVID-19, which I'll tweet out. Stephen Ross Pomeroy, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Dan, Amy, thank you for having me on. And if anytime you want to have me back on to talk about UFOs, I am down.
All right, very good. We will do that.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to Dan and Amy on your smartphone. Download the AM 560 mobile app today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Honey, what are we going to do with your grandparents' old coins and jewelry?
I'm pretty sure they're worth some money.
You've been saying that for years.
Okay, how about PGS Gold and Coin? They're the best when it comes to selling family valuables.
And you know this because...
PGS, when it comes to your valuables, they're the best.
Do that again.
PGS, when it comes to your valuables, they're the best.
Isn't that the place Jeff sold his grandmother's jewelry when she passed?
Yep, he checked out